tried to play other places, never worked out. Kind of watching the war on TV, and I was like, well, I have a daughter. Let's try and find a way to pay for some diapers and formula. And so I joined the military. But, you know, I joined trying to do, like, fucking infantry. Like, if I'm going to do this, I want to see it. I want to be a part of that world, and I want to do special operations. I scored a 110 on my GT score, a 108. And so to do special forces, I had to get a 110, and they didn't have the 2-point waiver at the time. And so I had to do Ranger. And again, no fucking clue what Ranger was besides the movie Black Hawk Down. And I was like, fuck yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I had the balls to take the fight to the enemy like these dudes. But
that's
it was
an intense movie.
Dude, that's what I was like. But I would love to fucking see if I got it in me, you know? And so that's what I decided to try and do.
And when were you, you were a drill sergeant too, right?
Yeah, so after you do your active duty, I did my 4 years active duty with Rangertown, and then kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, I kept my foot in the door doing reserves. And as a reservist, I joined as a drill sergeant. So I had to become a drill sergeant. I had to go to drill sergeant. When he goes, I just saw a video, I think I want to try. I was like, oh shit, you know? And then I'm like, what kind of job would you want to do? Because I don't know. I was like, don't do infantry. And the dad of me was like trying to protect him from that world, you know. Yeah. But he's my son. I imagine he wants to try and do similar to what I did. And
yeah,
so,
that's
a
normal,
scary fucking thing, dude.
I know. Well,
how did it feel for you with your son?
Man, you're just so invested because, you know, when he's in RASP and going through things, I remember stories of the drill sergeants and the different ones. Some were harder than others. You hope like you're doing the push-ups and like you got to get this many or whatever. And like this one guy counts, you know, pretty strict. This guy. So it's like you hear, it feels like you're there because then you're like waiting for the update. Right? How did it go? And yeah, and then, you know, the land nav, that was always, you know, you hear stories and all. To me, it sounded like, oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah,
but through my son, I could imagine what that feels like. And, yeah, pretty amazing. So you went from there and then drill sergeant, and then what'd you do?
It was a prison guard at the same time as a drill sergeant. I was in the reserve time as drill, and then a prison guard. But immediately I applied for the border patrol, so I was going through the border patrol hiring process.
What prison was it?
It's a private prison. It was called CCA, Corrections Corporation of America. And so, first time I ever heard of a private prison. I just knew that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Really?
No.
This is gonna blow your fucking mind.
Okay.
Because back then it wasn't. So in prison they're able to change their diet, and they make it right. So if you change your diet to, it could be a whatever diet. There's certain diets that offer oranges and fruits, right? And so I think it was called a kosher diet at the time. And so they're saving their fruits and they're able to ferment it and make it. So right? It makes a prison hooch, man. It smells good, dude. It smells like a good
being
burger.
Creative.
Yeah. The ingenuity in prison is crazy,
yeah,
bro.
I bet.
Yeah, and so they were drinking, they were celebrating something. One was in there for murder, one was in there for attempted murder. They're both natives at one of the local, you know, in the surrounding Indian reservations. And I read up on the dude who riots all over this little area of Arizona. And then you have another company that's supposed to be called Geo, and another prison company. And these are all over the nation. You Google them, it's a different thing.
You know, last week I went to a prison for the first time. Went and talked to the inmates. I had never didn't know anything about it. And it's like, it was weird because, I mean, your experience is way different. You worked there, but it sounds weird to say, but the guys I met seemed like great guys. I mean, I was just like, and then I heard the stories about what they did. But on a human level, many mistakes, but it could have just been one. And then they're there.
It's a weird thing because there was, you know, I didn't have the hand tattoos yet, but I still had the full sleeves, and guys would always ask me questions. Where are you from? You know, and so I started gaining kind of a reputation. And so me and my wife go get tattoos all the time too.
That's awesome.
And so it became a thing.
Well, so from your deployments, would you get a tattoo based on the deployment, or?
No, you know, I'm sure your son seems to be very similar to me in the sense of like, there's the Ranger culture that was fun for war, but as soon as I was able to kind of step outside of that, I was back to being myself. I had my own identity, and you know, I just. And one of the sayings here is Psalms 18:32-45, and this was Tulsa was before a mission by Jeff Schruger, well-known chaplain, but also he was one of the gentlemen who was in Black Hawk.
Oh.
And so he was we were going on a mission. And people see the border situation as one conversation, and I think it's actually two conversations that have to happen at once. And if both sides of this conversation actually communicated better, they would both see that the answer is real, and there's kind of a middle ground to it. You know, this conversation with the border, it's two things happening at once. You have immigration law, and you have and immigration is in this country. But now, we have to answer both of those without losing too much of one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
If we do too much homeland security, well, then we become something too like what determines someone coming across illegally. That means they're coming across outside of a port of entry. You know the port of entries if you're going to Mexico?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are ports of entries. If you want to come in, you should use that. And even if it's just like, hey, I'm just going to go grab food, there's a process to get authorization to do that. If you come into America anywhere outside of that port of entry, you have now broken the law. That's called Title 8. It's USC 1325 is entering the country illegally outside of the port of entry the first time. So anyone who did that during the Obama era was going to jail for 30, 60, 90 days. And so what happens is the Border Patrol apprehends them. We apprehend, that means that we've apprehended them, but we're also making sure we're safeguarding human life. A big part of the Border Patrol mission is to save lives if needed. We wear a lot of hats. We save lives, we do crisis response, we do medical interventions, and then we bring them in to process them. When it gets to the Border Patrol agent and he takes them into the processing center, what happens there, it's not our duty to determine whether their claim of asylum is legit. It's not in my capabilities. I say, oh, you're claiming asylum? Okay. Well, then here's the asylum paperwork. Boom. What we're talking about here is a multi-layered system here that happens, and the Border Patrol is one part of this big system. And I'm not shitting on ERO or the ICE, but I'm saying, well, that was their job, and that was what they had in place, and there was no system in place to make it any better. And so we have to fix that, right?
And is that where we are now? It still needs to be fixed? Because now it's in the news every day.
Correct.
Your book, is even more meaningful, Borderline. It's like, to me, I'm empathetic to the guys working on the border.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, it feels like a no-win situation. You got people saying that you're letting too many in. You're like,
right.
We're worried about the Ukraine border, not our own southern border. It's like, man, that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. So the way I kind of, I always try and correct people. They're like, oh, the Border Patrol just letting them in. No, the Border Patrol is doing their job. They're actually apprehending them, processing them. Whatever policy in place after that, it's not our job. We hand off to ICE and they do whatever they have to do with it. If they're letting them go in 4 days with a notice to appear, well, that's the policy that they have to follow. We still did our job. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the past, we give them to ICE and they detain them. Now, we're giving them to ICE and some people are getting...
No, it's a shell game of responsibility, it feels like. So what do you think? There's another theory out there that, well, they're trying to pad Democratic voters.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
But how do you see that? Adding tens of million, potentially, who knows if they even will vote? I mean, half Americans don't even vote. Or regular, long-time citizens.
Just like from a position of someone who's seen a lot of shit overseas and who's seen some bad shit in America, what concerns me is the people that don't want good upon the country. So that's my biggest concern. My biggest concern is Homeland Security. Besides the Homeland Security that we're kind of leaned too far immigration, where we don't have our Homeland Security
right
on as much.
Yeah.
Right. So that really scares me. All the other people coming in, I don't like in this
everything, and it pits us versus them.
That's what the problem.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I say the two arguments are happening simultaneously, and maybe both are kind of right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the media doesn't give us that. The media says, conservatives this and liberals this, and then they go Trump and Biden, and it's creating such division in this nation that it makes me feel compelled, like, well, it's really in the middle there, guys. And we should try and see it in a more human aspect.
Right.
I don't want people breaking the law to come to this country either. At the same time, I also don't like that it takes 12 years for a good person who really want to come to this country and work their ass off. So there's something that has to be said about that too, right? There's multiple layers of this immigration system that we need to look at. You know that there's, I think that right now, like 630 something deported combat veterans. Veterans who come to America, they come to serve our country, and they're promised that they're going to become citizens. But then right before they get their citizen paper done, they have an alcohol issue, a DUI. They get deported, or there are many different little things. That's I'm just saying generally. And because the way the system is built, and they didn't think about maybe they have post-traumatic stress from combat. Maybe they're students. No, they have a DUI, and boom, they just sent them right back to the country. They don't even know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues in this immigration thing that needs to kind of be addressed, and I think
I hear you.
so it's a really interesting thing that like we conform to the culture because it's what we do, it's what everyone's done, and then adding combat to that, it really made coming back from combat like, fuck it, why don't I drink? Because the next 6 months I'm training and I go right back overseas, so I'm gonna get killed anyway, so fucking enjoy it. And that turned into not really. It wasn't an era of wellness. It wasn't an era of counseling and trying to better ourselves. It wasn't about that. It was about being really good at our job. And that means drinking, fucking fighting.
Yeah.
Army Ranger.
Going hard all the time.
Right. And
Yeah.
so you start to believe that, and it becomes a part of you. And if that's not you, then you're not really a Ranger, are you? You know, and that didn't leave me for a while. Like, I got out of the military and continued to train because it's what I did. And you start to really fall into that system. And it was no post-traumatic stress. And eventually I saw a counselor because kind of forced to in a sense. Where a buddy said, hey, this guy fucking is you.
Yeah.
And she took me down the path of EMDR, which is the first step into the counseling direction I went. And so I have dreams.
What does that stand for?
EMDR. It's I don't know the exact name for it, but what it is recreating rapid eye movement with your eyes, and it helps process trauma back into memory. And so the trauma gets stored in our frontal cortex because of like all the hormone dumps, you know, cortisol and everything else. And when that trauma doesn't get to process like a memory, like goes through your brain, kind of goes through the process of I guess acceptance of something, it gets stored up there. And so these post-traumatic stress moments, you keep reliving, and your body feels the same, the same feelings of the breathing, of the moment that's stored. You keep reoccurring, and that's like this fucking shitty thing. And so I was having this nightmare. I come around a corner, post-traumatic stress and excessive drinking. It creates chemicals in your brain that create suicide ideation. So essentially every fucking Ranger who's ever fucking done the job has all those.
Yeah.
And you're essentially ticking time bomb for your own suicide because you're giving yourself the last, serum that you needed to kind of close up that gap. And so my friends are losing their lives to their own selves, and all of them been drinking. So when my wife said that, I said, you know what? It's probably a good time. So I stopped. And I haven't continued.
How long ago was that?
It's about almost 5 years now. It's
Really?
4 years, 9 months. Yeah. Dude, man, it's been, I was the type of guy that would say, I don't trust a man who doesn't drink. I was that guy. I was like, why wouldn't you fucking drink? I don't get it. And then now I'm like, fuck, I was so, like, culturally, but not even that, like, I was manipulated to really believe that was kind of the man I was. But I've learned to make those on my own now without alcohol, but there's moments I still have moments where I'm like, oh fuck. But
Yeah.
I even think like, I hate when I do this, but I always like, I think I can go back to it. And like, no, dude, don't do it, dude. Don't fucking do it.
You can get away with it maybe a couple times, but you know it's going to go back to the same old shit.
Yeah.
At least I know.
I feel like one bad night and it's a bad memory, then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you just go down that hole.
Have veterans reached out for guidance from you because of your story?
Yeah, I have a men's group I manage. It's really like an accountability circle of things. We have a thing called Light Diffuse, and a lot of those guys are put into the circle of that, and it's just kind of, what are your 5 goals for the year, and let's get them done, and kind of keeping them in line. These guys see the drinking thing that I've done, and it kind of motivates them to try the same. Not everyone does, too. Like, some people some people are still where I was, where like, they don't want to hear it. They're like, yeah, bro, no, everything's good. I can handle my job. Okay, bro.
Yeah.
Some people can, some people can't. You
Yeah.
know? I think it's like the same whole thing with mental health and wellness.